You know that feeling, right? The one where it seems like the future is suddenly arriving way, way faster than you ever expected. It's like one minute we're all talking about science fiction, and the next, reality is just lapping our old predictions. Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to unpack the dizzying speed of AI progress and figure out exactly how we got here.
And that really brings us to the big question, the one that's probably on your mind too. What was the tipping point? When did the slow, steady march of AI progress suddenly kick into this insane gear that's left all of us just trying to keep up?
All right, so to answer that, we're going to go on a little journey through 5 key stages. We'll start with why this kind of growth feels so weird to us. Then we'll travel through the long history of AI's ups and downs, pinpoint the 2 key breakthroughs that really lit the fuse, watch the explosion that followed, and then, finally, try to make sense of what it means to be living on this wild curve today.
And look, here's the #1 reason why this all feels so jarring. Our brains are just not built for this. Seriously, we think in straight, predictable lines. Step 1, Step 2, Step 3. But technology, and especially AI, it grows on a curve, an exponential one. That huge gap between how we think things should go and how they actually are going is why today's pace feels so sudden and honestly a little shocking. To really get a feel for that curve, we have to go all the way back to the beginning, back to the long, flat part of the road. For the first, 50 years or so, AI was this story of brilliant ideas and big promises. But the progress was super slow, and it was marked by these long periods of intense doubt. This was what's called the rule-based era. The earliest AIs weren't brains that could learn on their own. Nope. It was more like having a super literally minded robot. It could only do what a human explicitly programmed it to do, following this giant list of, if this happens, then do that, commands. And you can actually see the initial excitement building through the 50s and 60s. So in 1950, Alan Turing asks his famous question, can a machine fool you into thinking it's human? By 56, the field actually gets its name. Then we get the first proto-neural network in 57 and the very first chatbot in 66. But then, well, the funding dried up, the hype just fizzled out, and the first AI winter set in. Now let's zoom in on that perceptron for a second, because this was a truly revolutionary idea, even if it seems kind of simple to us now. The idea was, to teach it to recognize a cat, you'd tell it that inputs like has whiskers get a heavier weight, they're more important, than say an input like is brown. It was a basic concept for sure, but it was the absolute seed for everything that would come later. So after that first winter, a big thaw started, and with it, a huge shift in thinking. The goal was no longer about painstakingly programming an AI with a million rules. The new goal was to design systems that could find patterns and learn all by themselves. This was the dawn of the machine learning era.
And the key that unlocked this whole new era of learning was an algorithm called backpropagation. Honestly, the best way to think about it is like a student taking a practice test. The AI runs through all the problems, it checks its answers, and here's the magic part, it goes back and only restudies the specific stuff for the questions it got wrong. It was an incredibly efficient way to learn from your mistakes.
So with this new tool, progress really started to pick up again. By 89, an AI could recognize handwriting. In 97, we had that huge cultural moment when IBM's Deep Blue beat the world chess champion. And then, in 99, something happened kind of quietly that would end up changing absolutely everything. Nvidia released the first modern GPU for gaming. But, well, history tends to repeat itself. The hype got way ahead of reality, funding vanished, and we fell into the second AI winter. The big takeaway from this whole period is that for decades, progress was just this repeating cycle of promise and disappointment, just waiting for the right ingredients to finally show up. So what finally broke that cycle of hype and disappointment for good? What was the spark that finally lit the fuse that led to this exponential growth? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was a perfect 1-2 punch. First, in 2006, a breakthrough called deep belief networks let AI start learning from the massive, messy, unlabeled data of the real internet, which removed a huge human bottleneck. Then, just 1 year later, Nvidia's software, CUDA, unlocked the insane processing power of those gaming GPUs for general-purpose AI. So all of a sudden, you had an AI that could teach itself from the chaos of the internet, and you had the super-powered engine it needed to run on. That was the 1-2 punch that changed everything. And with that, the curve goes vertical. Those 2 breakthroughs launched us directly into the era we're all living in right now, the deep learning explosion. The slow march was officially over. So what's so deep about deep learning anyway? Well, think of it like this.
A standard neural network might have like one hidden layer to do its thinking. But a deep network has tons of layers. The first layer might just spot simple shapes. The next one combines those into textures, the next into objects, and so on and so on. Each layer adds a whole new level of abstraction, and that allows for way more complex and sophisticated results.
So with these deep networks running on super fast GPUs, the floodgates just burst open. And just look at this timeline. 2017, the transformer architecture, that's the T in GPT. 2020, GPT-3 is writing text that's blowing researchers' minds. Late 2022, ChatGPT goes public. 2024, Sora is generating video from a text prompt. The pace it's just breathtaking.
Which, of course, brings us right back to today. We are all living on the super steep part of that exponential curve, and yeah, it can feel pretty disorienting. A big reason for that is because our very definition of what AI even is constantly shifting right under our feet. There's actually a name for this little psychological quirk. It's called moving the goalposts. And think about it. It wasn't that long ago that something like Siri or Alexa was considered mind-blowing AI. Today, we just think of them as a feature on our phone. Our definition of real AI is always whatever's just over the horizon. You know who summed this up perfectly? The guy who literally coined the term artificial intelligence. John McCarthy famously said, "As soon as it works, no one calls it AI anymore." We've gotten to a point today that would have seemed like actual magic just a decade ago, and we've gotten so used to it we barely even notice.
So the big question now is, are we heading for another AI winter? Well, it's looking pretty unlikely this time around, and for three really big reasons. First, this stuff is everywhere now, used by every major company. Second, the amount of money pouring in is just massive, and it's not stopping. And third, and this is probably the most important part, AI is now being used to create better AI, which could just keep this exponential growth going, well, indefinitely.
If you need just one single fact to really grasp the sheer scale of this new era, think about this. Right now, ChatGPT is one of the top 10 most visited websites on the entire internet. Yeah, it's up there with Google and YouTube. This isn't some niche research project anymore. It has become a global utility in the blink of an eye. So all of this leaves us with one last pretty profound question. We're not really asking if this trend is going to continue anymore. The real question is, when progress that used to take years now happens in a matter of months, how do you adapt? In a world where the future arrives faster than any of us can possibly predict, what does being ready even look like?